So Austin, I was wondering, how did this whole X-Plane thing come to be?
Oh yeah, so people ask me that question from time to time, and I've never really made a YouTube video to explain it. So here goes. It was back right around 1990 or so, something like that. I just graduated from high school, and I had an internship at an aerospace company in La Jolla, California. And it was a really small aerospace company, and they had a guy writing their flight simulator that was doing a bad job on purpose. He didn't like his bosses, and because he was one of those disgruntled people that passive quits, he was intentionally writing things slow, and it was just, he was not doing a good job writing their flight sim. At this internship, which I got, by the way, because my aunt knew the owners of the company, they didn't know what to do with me. They didn't understand computers themselves very well, and so they literally had me sorting their business cards. That was all they could think of for me to do as an intern. Well, the guy that was intentionally doing a bad job of making the flight sim, they finally fired him. They're like, we can't keep doing this paycheck for this guy that's intentionally doing a bad job. And because they didn't understand computers, they didn't know any better than to tell me to do it. They said, Austin, why don't you fix the flight sim? And I was like, I can't fix a flight sim. I have no idea how to code a computer. I mean, I barely know any programming language, and nobody knows how to program a flight sim. That's way too advanced. And so I started looking at the code. I was like, well, wait a minute. This actually isn't that hard, and just with some cleaner, practices on coding, this sim could be a lot faster. We have a lot more frame rate, and we can make this thing a lot better and more consistent. And so I actually started writing the simulator for this company because they just didn't know that I couldn't do it. Right around this time, I was at Carnegie Mellon University, and I started getting the idea of writing this thing, and I started trying to do this at college at Carnegie Mellon, and they flunked me out of Carnegie Mellon because I missed my grade point average standards because I was spending all my time with my new obsession writing this flight simulator. And the only A I ever got at Carnegie Mellon was Comp Sci 215. It was the computer programming course, the one course everyone else would fail out of. And then as I was at Iowa State University, after getting kicked out of Carnegie Mellon, at Iowa State, I started to write this thing to let me practice instrument flying. Another problem I had is when I was out doing this internship in California, I was having a hell of a time passing an instrument currency test. That you have to take every 6 months to take instrument currency. It's one of the harder things to do. I had a heck of a time passing it. And so I said, I need a simulator to help me with instrument flying. I'll use this simulator that I'm in the middle of writing. I was flying a Piper Archer II at the time. So I wrote a little flight simulator called Archer II IFR, is what it was called. And the thing is, Piper would not tell me, obviously, exactly what all the flight characteristics of the airplane were, right? I mean, you can get the cruise speed, but that doesn't tell you how it banks and turns and roll rate and all that. I'm like, well, how do I get this airplane to maneuver properly? Anybody can just copy the POH performance. How do you get it to maneuver properly? And that would require all sorts of data and curves and stability derivatives and a bunch of stuff I never get from Piper. And so I said, well, wait a minute. The only way to really get this right was to break the plane down into a bunch of little pieces and find the force on each little piece using first principles physics. And if I do that, then I don't have to get all the performance curves from Piper, you see? And so I wrote this simulator called Archer II IFR that did a perfect job of the Piper Archer. But what suddenly occurred to me is because blade element theory breaks this airplane down into a bunch of pieces, I can use it for any airplane, not just an Archer II IFR. So what do you call it?
X-Plane.
X-Plane. And so I called it X-Plane. This is the very beginning of the internet, so I could get xplane.com. And that's pretty much where it started. Now at this point, I never assumed I could ever make any money off of it or have a career from it. All my friends in aerospace engineering at Iowa State back around 1990, it was just assumed they'd go work for Boeing or Lockheed Martin or some big defense contractor in aerospace. But here's the problem. This was right around the time the Russian problem was thawing out a bit, and there were better relations. Remember the wall was coming down and all that stuff? And so all of a sudden there was a lot less military spending going on, and it suddenly became apparent I might not be able to get a job with a big aerospace contractor because they just weren't hiring because they were trying to do more with less was their whole idea. And so I was in this weird little case where I had to make a flight simulator because the guy before me was doing a bad job on purpose. I was failing my instrument currency check, and so I needed to get my own currency done. I'm going to Carnegie Mellon and getting booted out, but the only A I got was in Comp Sci, and all these things just, and then I couldn't get a job at Boeing or Lockheed Martin because they weren't hiring because of the political environment at the time. And so where does that leave me? with a flight simulator coming out of college. And so out of college, I started selling it. So there's a whole lot of kind of interesting little like failures and things going wrong, and just kind of meeting the need of the moment. And that's how it all got started.
Interesting.